92. Now it's gone back to 148 petrol. See, they're playing games with the public. And the public can't do nothing about it. Same with the gas prices. We know there's a war going on. You know, it's hardly being helped by all these other countries the way it's gone on at the moment. You know, America mainly, they're all earning a fortune out of it. And we can't do a thing about it.
Well, I mean, you say they're a windfall tax. The government did introduce something of a windfall tax, didn't it? So is it a bit unfair to suggest that they're not doing anything about it? I mean, Liz Truss came along and decided to slash taxes for the richest, and that didn't go well for her, did it? So I think there is. I think they have learned their lesson from that to some degree, because she lost her job over it.
Yeah, my friend, you don't honestly think Liz Truss and Quasi Quant that wasn't a straight event. You know, he suddenly come up with his chancellor. He didn't last 6 weeks as a chancellor, and he suddenly come up with this, and all his hedge fund mates who are working for all the big people that play in this country on the money market. I mean, we allowed it to happen, and no one said a word.
Well, I think people definitely said stuff about Quasi Boateng and the mini budget. I mean, it was headlines for weeks and weeks and weeks, and ultimately they both lost their jobs.
What good did it? What good did it do? What good did that? All that what they said. What good did it do? He's gone away in the sunset somewhere, and like living in shock. Right in the country, the pound went from 113 down to 103. We lost nearly 10%, 9% in value in the currency, and all of a sudden now it's back at over 120. You know what I mean? None of it makes sense, and none of it adds up. The ordinary people don't even understand what's going on. You know, figure-wise, they haven't got a clue. And these people running the country can get away with murder. You can do 37 billion in test and trace. You can do 8 billion in procurement. Yeah, procurement, meaning like buying and stuff at the wrong money. It's just disgusting. 45 billion went missing, and we can't afford to pump the money back into the system. If you block a sewer up with excrement in the middle of a sewer, it will all come back and flow over you. If you don't allow money to flow through the system, you will have no... If it flows through, you will tax it. It will all come back into the system. It's quite obvious. I'm not an economic student, but I understand how it all works. And then people running the country know how it works, but they only want it for them.
All right, John in Bethnal Green, thanks so much for your call this afternoon. So John quite clearly places the blame at the government's door for all of this, saying, you know, it's mismanagement, essentially, of the economy, which means that food banks are having to close. We heard earlier from Ray Wolfson, who runs the UK's largest independent food bank, or co-founded it, and he was saying that food banks will have to close because of rising energy costs. They can't even afford to be the backstop themselves anymore for those who are desperate in need, because the cost of living crisis is even pricing them out of their operation. We'll come back to some of your calls on the cost of living crisis in just a moment, but as we look at the rising costs across the board, ambulance services in England are also struggling with this. They're facing a £14 million rise in their fuel bills. Of course, they get through a fair bit of petrol, and these are figures which have been uncovered by the Liberal Democrats. So let's speak to Layla Moran now, who's the Lib Dem MP for Oxford West and Abingdon. Good afternoon to you, Layla.
Happy New Year.
Thank you. Happy New Year to you too. So what exactly have you uncovered with your data?
So we did freedom of information requests to ambulance trusts in the UK. 9 out of 10 came back, and basically they're suffering from the same rise in fuel costs as everyone else, but it's exacerbating their own ability to operate with the money that they've got. What we've uncovered is it's going to cost an extra £14 million over the next year to fund our ambulance service fuel costs alone compared to last year, and it's money that they really can't afford to not have right now, given all the other problems that the NHS is facing. So our call is very much on the government to look at this specific problem, to fund, make sure that no ambulance service is left behind, as it were. But you know, I think your last call was it very well in its tone. This is a government that is presiding over a downward spiral of not just the NHS but public services generally, and this rising cost of living crisis, which people are feeling in their pockets right now, you know, is also being felt by public services, councils, the NHS, every single public service is feeling it too.
Although this will be £14 million that ambulance services can't afford to cover or don't want to have to cover, the government is putting £14 billion into the NHS and social care over the next 2 years. So it is a bit unfair to suggest that the government's not doing anything at all about this, and some of these factors are beyond their control. The war in
but it was bad to begin with. And now we've got the war in Ukraine on top, we've got cost of living crisis. We are absolutely at breaking point with the NHS, but it all stems back from decisions that the Conservatives made before. There's a local doctor who tweets regularly, her name's Rachel Clark, and she put on Twitter this, and I think it's worth reading. She says, in 14 years as a doctor, I've never known such horrific conditions. Patients dying on trolleys with zero dignity, or screaming and moaning in corridors, Dickensian overcrowding, total implosion, despair, weeping staff, abject misery. This is on the Conservative government's watch, and they are now saying that they're putting all this money in. It's not just about money, it's also about competence. If we've learned one thing from the Tory party in the last year, is that they are incompetent and they need to go. And that's how we start to fix these problems.
You know, what would the Lib Dems do differently? Because you, if you were in government, you would inherit exactly the same economic landscape that the Conservatives are dealing with. There's not an infinite amount of money here. So what would you do? Just borrow more money?
Well, no. I mean, first of all, it's worth saying we are inheriting, if we were in that position, something that they made worse. The mini budget, which you've spoken about already in this hour, was very much the huge own goal. That was £30 billion, more or less. We know that they had presided over public services that are no longer working at maximum efficiency. But how we would raise it, I mean, the windfall tax is interesting because yes, they introduced it, but I think it's also interesting that they decided to include loopholes in it that meant for every pound invested by fossil fuel companies, they got 91p back. And Shell, the giant Shell, admitted that in 2022 they paid a grand total of £0 to the Exchequer due to the windfall tax. So just closing that loophole alone would bring in 60 billion, would start to help some of these problems. And it should be going to households, but it should also be going to public services, which are on their knees, the NHS being one, but there are others too.
Okay, Leila Moran, Lib Dem MP for Oxford West and Abingdon, thanks so much for your time this afternoon. That was Leila Moran there talking about the fact that ambulance services are also struggling with the cost of living because petrol prices are rising. So let's get back to some of your personal experiences here. How are you feeling about the year ahead in 2023? Are you already struggling to pay your bills? Are you worried it's going to get worse? You can call me 0345 6060 873. We'll get back to some of your calls in just a moment, but it's 3:46. You're listening to LBC.
Coming up at 4 on LBC, Ian Payne. Rishi Sunak says the government has spent a record amount on the NHS. Have you noticed a difference? Ian Payne on LBC.
The TUI Live Happy sale is back. At TUI, we have great offers on loads of holidays. Here we come. You could save up to £250 per booking, plus pay monthly with a £0 deposit. Dreamy. All at unprotected. TUI Live Happy. Booking T's and C's apply. Selected departures. Minimum spend applies. Direct debit minimum 26 weeks from departure. See website for details.
Oh no, now what do I do? Indicators on, go left, at the next junction, go left, find an emergency zone, go left, don't forget your phone, go left, out the passenger door.
Your car breaks down on the motorway, remember one thing, go left. Search Go Left, National Highways.
Here are the words every timeshare owner will be dreading to hear. Your 2023 timeshare maintenance fees are due. If you own a timeshare, you need to consider whether it's a good investment. MyTimeshareClaim.co.uk has helped thousands of owners who were missold exit their contract and receive compensation. If you bought a timeshare after 5th of January,
For those insurance policies as unique as they are.
15% of global deforestation is from toilet roll alone. The switch to serious tissues, and they don't cut down trees. In fact, serious tissues plant a tree for every roll sold. Serious tissues are carbon neutral. They're cleverly made from recycled paper in the UK. So instead of cutting down trees, you can plant a forest from your bathroom. Subscribe today for 10% off and free shipping at serioustissues.com.
For delicious, award-winning jerky and biltong, visit RagingBullSnacks.com and enjoy 15%
10% off your first order.
Raging Bull snacks, made without compromise.
Leading Britain's conversation, LBC, with Paul Brand.
Good afternoon to you, listening to Paul Brand on LBC. Thanks so much for all your calls and texts. We're talking about the year ahead and how people are feeling about the prospect of 2023 and the cost of living crisis that is gripping the country. Let's talk to Brenda now, who's in St Ives. Good afternoon to you, Brenda.
Good afternoon, Paul. I'm shaking with fear.
Really? Really? Why?
Not for myself, I'm okay. I'm an 82-year-old pensioner. I've got a pension, a private pension. I've been listening to people who people sit down and listen to them and be my husband absolutely describing how to sleep for my day. Go to sleep and hold it up no food and people wear it down to help. And this is what this government is doing. They want us to do all the help. They are pouring out more and more contempt on the people, on us. And the compassion of the public is amazing. But we've got a government that's evil. I'm sorry, they are evil. They don't care. Their priority is to their people. They haven't cared a toss about us since COVID. They don't care. They could have, instead of throwing money at us all, like these handouts, 600 or 400, they could have put a windfall tax on these energy companies. We're seeing every day them making billions and billions of pounds, and I actually see it now as like the slave trade. We're the slaves, and they're the stately homeowners, and we are being ground and ground and ground into the floor. They want this to happen. They're destroying businesses. I listened to a publican yesterday whose energy bills have gone from 6,000 to 60,000. They could have helped the hospitality by cutting their business tax, reduce their energy. They could have done. They're just collecting more and more and more money. And when they throw money, little bits of money to us, they say, look what we're doing, we're helping you. And when they've spent £18 million on a ridiculous advert on how to close curtains and lower the temperature on your pool, that is patronising to 2-year-olds. I'm absolutely sick to death of this government, like most people. And that guy that spoke from Bexhill Green, he said that we're angry, and I think people will get to this week. And I think there's a lack of strength in this country to bring this government down, because they're not fair now. We're in hell in a handball, but they don't know which way to turn. All they do is throw bits of money here, bits of money there, that doesn't do anything, because they have no plan. They're in a mess, they don't know which way to turn, but we're suffering.
But do you think a Labour government would take a particularly different approach? I mean, they do want a windfall tax, so that's one big point of difference. But they would be dealing with the same economic landscape.
I know, they will take on this mess that the Conservatives have caused over the last 12 years. We've got sewage in our water, we've got infrastructure that's bursting, there's gas pipes bursting, there's water flowing into gas pipes because they've not dealt, they never ever see beyond their noses. It's just short-term things that they put in place. They don't look long-term like other countries. And we can't nationalise I'd love to see nationalisation of all the utilities, but we've sold them all off to Europe. To buy them back would be astronomical. They've absolutely brought this country to its knees, and we've lost all the values, our culture, everything that we held dear, they've taken away from us. And the life now, it's like silence everywhere. Shops are closed, high streets are dead. That's not happening in Europe. Towns in Europe are buzzing. Why is it I know why they're doing it. They want all the corporates to come in and take over. That's what they want, and that's what they're trying to achieve.
All right, Brenda in St Ives, thanks so much for your call. So Brenda clearly places the blame at the feet of the government for the cost of living crisis and feels as though they're not doing enough to help people. They would argue, help people with their energy bills, of course. And I do think that Rishi Sunak, if he wants to win the next election, is going to have to prioritise the cost of living crisis. Let's talk to Evan now, who's in Slough. Good afternoon to you, Evan.
Hi, Paul. On the topic of food banks, I just want to say that I don't like food banks at all. I think ultimately just duplicating resources. You pay for goods as you go out, then you put them into baskets for somebody to transport to another location, to put it in the warehouse, to have more people look after it, put it in storage, all the heating, etc. Where else is saving? That's extra cost is inflationary. There's no benefit to it whatsoever.
Yeah, you're right.
In the UK,
I see your point, because actually, if you're just moving food from one location to another and putting it in a food bank, then you've got to pay obviously to heat the building, to refrigerate the food. Whereas, are you arguing that it would be better for the government to, for example, increase benefits or increase people's wages so that they can afford the food in the first place, and then they don't have to go to the food bank, and there wouldn't be these sort of middleman costs accrued?
I mean, in my view, that with the 21st century, that Britain should not be, nobody in Britain should be a charity. Nobody should be. We should have a system that supports us. Because the worst off, providing them with sufficient money to get by is what we would expect. And that's important to our society. We look after a neighbour, and it's good for us. If those people, our jobs depend on those people, and those people, we will eventually depend on them. As they get to, they're not going to be giving your money out of your pocket. If your spending is being hit, so that you're going to pass your spending on somewhere else. The government can't just print money or give more money to people without generating inflation. So charities themselves are inflationary. So if the government social system is doing the right job, then we rely less on charities. So we have to do the right thing. We have to make sure we support those who are worst off, and the government does need to make sure they get that 100% right, especially that we're now in an energy war.
Okay, Evan in Slough, thanks so much for your call. Let's go to Mark now, who's in Plymouth. Good afternoon to you, Mark.
Oh, hi, yeah. Yeah, I just think a lot of problems we've got nowadays in this country are long-term problems that have been created by the Conservatives. The NHS, when Tony Blair was elected in 97, was terrible waiting lists and everything else, and he improved it massively. I didn't agree with every way he did it, but the waiting list went down, way down. And if you look at any graph, any independent graph from 2010 onwards, same old Tory government, waiting lists have gone up. People that are waiting for cancer treatment's gone up, and now we're in the. They did have
the pandemic to deal with, though, didn't they, Mark? So it wasn't all within their gift.
If you look at any independent graph, well sourced, the waiting lists and people waiting for serious operations and everything else were going up way before the pandemic. They're using that as an excuse. Yes, it's added to the problem, but the problem with the NHS was it was in a bad position before the pandemic started. And you can see it's steady growth. They've done it with utility companies. I don't believe we should have sold utility companies. I'm not happy. If you said when they privatised utility companies, by the way, in the future, you'll have EDF, who are owned by the French government, profiteering from people that pay electricity and gas in this country. It's just ludicrous. And what they've done over a long term is sell everything off. And every time the Conservative government are in power, it's always the elites and people that are very wealthy who seem to benefit from it. Every time.
All right, Mark, thanks so much for your call this afternoon. A couple of texts just to finish off the show here. And Michaela says the herd of elephants in the room is called Brexit. That's why the cost of living crisis is worse in Britain than the rest of Europe, according to her. Another text here from James, who says, love the show, Paul. Quite convenient that the Lib Dem MP is highly critical of the current Tory government. Let's not forget that the Lib Dems were in coalition with the Conservatives for half of the past 12 years. They must take some of the blame for the state of all of our public services. I'm a serving police officer, and the current problems all started in 2010 with Theresa May as Home Secretary, David Cameron as Prime Minister, and Nick Clegg as Deputy Prime Minister. That's James's view there.